Bonjour, here is your flute. This is the D major with extended high octave range. It's quite a lovely piece. There's some wax inside of these tone holes, so make sure that that always remains in there. You can feel it from the inside and the out. It's well sealed in there, but this wax right here is to just it's for acoustics to flatten the tonal quality of the pipe. These two tone holes can remain open, but these ones always have to have their wax in them. So just by any chance, if the wax ends up falling out, or it accidentally gets poked out by something, all you have to really do is get some regular beeswax or candle wax and just kind of melt it back down in there. But for now, you should be fine. The flute has a lot of good longevity built into it, so I'm not foreseeing you having to do any sort of labor or maintenance on this thing for a very long time. So here's just a general overview about the flute. The fetish cap is held on here by these three simple leather tassels, and they're just held on by the first part of tying your shoes, so just a regular crossover knot. As long as they're nice and tight, the block, there's a backstop right here, so the block can't move back that past this backstop, which is the optimal position for the flute. So always make sure that the block is at the farthest point back, and it's pretty much locked in there right now because it's real nice and tight. Got a cedar mouthpiece, and I'll just give you some pointers on playing. A second. The root note, all holes closed, requires the most relaxed and soft breath pressure. As you lift holes 1, 2, and 3, you'll notice that you can add a little bit more air into each note. But when you're hanging out in, let's say, the bottom 3 holes of the flute, the general breath pressure sensitivity for this flute is very relaxed and disciplined. And it will pop into the upper register, which would be the high D, the high octave, if you put too much air into it. So there's a sweet spot there. And for this particular flute, it requires the most amount of just patience and listening to what it takes to break the flute up into the next register. But once you're there and you understand the sensitivity of this flute, it sounds very, very beautiful when it's mic'd up with a nice microphone. It's got some good audible volume just without being mic'd, but predominantly when you're playing, I would imagine if you're going to use it in a song or something like that, if you get a microphone anywhere near the sound area, it's a very, very smooth and crisp and sort of lush tonal quality from the piece. So breath pressure, when all holes are closed, make sure you get a really good seal on those finger holes. And when all holes are closed, you want to blow, I'd say, gentle to moderate at most once you get to the first 2 or 3 holes. And then as you get a little further, you can put a little bit more air into the piece. So I'll show you real quick what it takes to hit the low note and what it takes to make the low note break. So the main thing about this flute is that the low note does jump into the upper register relatively quickly. So this particular flute makes it so that you have to really, really kind of relax and hold back your breath pressure on the lowest notes. But once you get used to its sensitivity, then you can start incorporating the upper register techniques, which are very, very easy to activate. So if you're sitting in your low note, good exercise with this flute is to climb from root note all the way up, and then hit the high D, and then climb all the way up again, and then climb back down. And then once you're in the main register and you climb back down, if you do that enough, back and forth, you'll understand how gentle you need to be with the lowest note. Every flute has its own particular quirks. This one's upper register activation is really achieved by how slanted this cap is. So there was this kind of point where I had to decide what to do with this flute. And once I had the upper register active, it really increased the capabilities of the instrument in a lot of ways. It's the only thing in there that requires a bit more patience and discipline is to hang out and get some really nice, steady, patient, controlled breath in that low, low note. Okay? So that's the main things I can express about this flute that might be a little bit of a challenge at first, but once you get a good seal on these finger holes and you start understanding how much air it takes to make the piece work, it lends itself very, very well to having a lot of fun versatility. I'll give you one more example. See, it pops really fast, so that's something to pay attention to. It's it's a personal sort of preference thing at the end of the day, with people that don't mind the flute being able to break that quickly, and those that wish that their root note has a little bit more, I'd say sustain and back pressure where you can put a lot of wind into it. With this flute, you're just not going to get that, but you have the access to all those upper notes, which really makes for a lot of expressive playing. So there's, pros and cons to every way that you can create a flute. And this one has a fun little quirk that definitely wants the right person to get in touch with. So I want to explain that one particular thing about this instrument so that you're not too, apprehensive or, kind of figuring out how much more patience or time do I have to use with this one. It's just a matter of really getting relaxed and controlling that breath on the low note, okay? Then you got all those kind of higher octave overtones too, which can be achieved by really just kind of watermelon seed spitting sharp rates of breath pressure into the instrument. So there are a lot of different sort of sounds and tones that can be created from this. In a way, mic'd up with a lot of nice reverb and delay, you can do some really cool overtone stuff, which kind of would lend itself to sounding maybe a little bit more Middle Eastern, or even like a fujara or things like that. So that's the main stuff I'd like to explain about this flute. Super happy that it's making its way to Quebec. I had some time there in college whitewater rafting the Rouge River. So blessings and many thanks to you from the Flute Wizard. I appreciate it, and let me know when this beauty gets across the border safely. Okay? Take care.